I want you to think about the honesty with which both of these leaders, Rich and Mark, talk today, because they opened up about themselves. I want you to give them a round of applause for that authenticity. It takes a level of security to talk about yourself, and a part of leadership has everything to do with knowing oneself. I begin with poetry. William Carlos Williams said that it's difficult to find news in poetry, and yet men and women die every day because of a lack of what's found there. And I start with words from our beloved and now late Maya Angelou, who said, "Lift up your eyes upon this day breaking for you, give birth again to the dream. Women, children, men, take it, this dream, into the palms of your hands. Mold it into the image of your most public self. Sculpt it into the shape of your most private need. Here on the pulse of this new day, you may have the grace to look up and out and into your sister's eyes and into your brother's face and say simply, very simply with hope, good morning." Give poetry a round of applause. For poetry. For poetry. I am inspired today for many reasons. I always loved coming to Montgomery County because I would tell people they have the largest number of paying, well-prepared customers. That's just real. You really do. I mean, the Montgomery school system, Montgomery College are excellent. I go around the world talking about education, involved in international math competitions or whatever. No place is better than your county. I start with that. But give you a round of applause. You take it for granted. People take things for granted. Does that mean it's perfect? Of course not. Why are you here? Because we can be better. Anytime you have human beings, we can. The line we always use at UMBC was, success is never final. There's more to do. There is. But I want to take a minute and ask those brilliant students with whom I spent the morning. Rich and Mark knew they wanted to inspire me, give me some students to talk to, and we worked on a math problem this morning. And I'm going to ask all of them to stand. It was Hannah and Jefferson and Zachary and Gerald and Daniel and Faith and Marie. Where are you? Are you still here? Stand up, stand up, stand up, stand up, stand up. Turn around, let them see your faces. I want you to look into their faces and know that you're looking into the face of brilliance, And the reason I want you to be inspired is they are planning to major in everything from computer science to bioinformatics to nursing. It's very interesting, and they're gonna be leaders. They may be taking care of you one day. Keep that thought, all right? Have a seat, young people. All right, very proud of you. So my message today is simple, and I'm going to talk about 20 minutes. First of all, the president of Stanford gave a talk at ACE, is the American Council on Education. It's right there at 1 DuPont Circle. It's the organization of all college presidents, public, private, 2- and 4-year institutions. And he asked presidents this question. He said, how long can students typically stay with the teacher, with the lecturer, before the student begins to fade? This is for college students. How long do you think it is when in a lecture, when the students are listening, how long do you think before they begin to drift? I heard 7 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour. Oh, you're very optimistic, whoever said that. You're very optimistic. It's actually 8 minutes. It's 8 minutes. And the people at NIH will tell you, neuroscientists will tell you, for very disciplined professionals like you, how long do you think they can do it? I heard 2 hours, yeah, right. 12 minutes, 3 minutes. So you're telling me you've already faded out on me already, is that right? I get it. It's actually about 20 minutes. That doesn't mean you don't come back, but you think about what you have to do, right? You've got other things to do, or you end up thinking about home or what you're doing tonight, and students are thinking about when they go back, right? Now, first of all, what's the difference between when I'm standing here and when I come here? What's the difference? Somebody said I can see. What is the big difference? More personal? What, you say it again? Connected? More engaged? These students are on. They are on. I love it. And even for those of you in the back, raise your hands if you're with me in the back. I'm a math teacher. I've always wanted to make sure everybody's awake. All right? All right? Good. So here's the message. The way we think about ourselves, the language that we use, the way we interact with each other, the things we hold important, our values, will shape not only who we are today, but in the future. And I want to dedicate this talk to Nancy Kopp. And the reason I want to do that is that when I was working in Baltimore City at an inner city college, even before going to UMBC, she would be in the legislature, and she would representing Montgomery County, and I was not from Maryland, and when she first asked the questions, I was so impressed. I was there with the president, and I said, who is she? And they told me, and we couldn't Google that. There was no such thing as Google back then. But I did look her up and saw the background from the University of Chicago, and she became, for me, the best of elected officials for this reason. She represented Montgomery County so well, and many others who've done it, but I'm thinking about her. She represented it so well that she realized she was from the most privileged jurisdiction in our state. But she didn't say it, Mark and Rich, she didn't say it with arrogance. She wanted to understand, how do we help others to learn from what we're doing? How do we give support? So she wanted to know about my experience when I was working at an inner city college in my late 20s at Coppin State with the challenge. She wanted to understand the challenges of reading. She talked about the fact that even though Montgomery County is the most privileged, you have your share of poor people too. You have challenges here too. You may be the best educated, but that doesn't mean everybody's at that level. And she was trying to understand what she could do to be supportive of the state and also to help children who would not necessarily be sitting on the front row as really good students. All right? And I use that as my inspiration this morning, that when we think about what's important to us in Montgomery County or in Maryland or in our country, we must think about the fact that whatever we place attention on, whatever we put resources into, will become, whatever we love, will become who we are. If we love to read, and our children will love to read more. If we love math, then more and more children. I loved it when it was Jefferson who stole my heart this morning when he said, I'm not the best at math, but I really want to be better. I'm working on it. I'm working on it. That attitude, right, that was so important. And so when I think about leadership, I think about authenticity. I think about how your top two leaders today opened up about themselves and the difficult conversations we had concerning race, concerning health, right? My line has always been, I went through school very early. I did. I actually went to Hampton at 15. Was supposed to go to Washington at 14. At the last minute, my mother said I wasn't mature enough. But I did go to Hampton at 15, and it was the first. I had only seen whites in one summer because my parents sent me to Massachusetts just to see what it would be like to be in class with white kids. And this was to Springfield, Massachusetts. I've been back now, and I've told them the story. And the fact is, nobody would speak to me, not even the teachers. They were not mean. I was just, in the words of Richard Wright, Ralph Ellison, I was the invisible man, the invisible little kid, little chubby, smart kid. And literally, I'd raise my hand, and nobody else was raising, and they would look right through me. And it taught me how important a teacher is. When the teacher looks at you like they believe in you, you believe it. Give our teachers a round of applause, our teachers. And watch this leadership. How many of you in the room love reading, to read? How many of you love to read? So we all read, and we'll read the paper, we might read sports. The ones who really love to read are those who love to read novels, for example, right? You read it, right? But now watch this. I want you to be honest. Your leaders have been honest. I want you, this is about leadership, authenticity. How many of you love math? I want to see. Now, either of you are some great liars or you're really impressive. I have never, stand up if you love math. Let me see who you are. Okay. Wow, keep standing. Give a round of applause. Keep standing. Now, before you sit down, I want one of the students to holler out the problem. Now, I'm going to solve it today, but I don't want to see you fail. Wait a minute. Who wants to do it? Who wants to do it? Come on. Ms. Marie, come here, Marie, quickly. Give Marie a round of applause for being what you do. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
We have a class of 29 children. 20 of them have a dog.
Yes.
And 15 of them have a cat.
Yes.
How many of them have both?
A dog and a cat. Give her a round of applause. Okay? All right. And you can all sit down, and I will tell you this. If I told you that I would give you $1,000 if one of the adults in the room could come up and tell us the answer, how many of you would be willing to try it? $1,000, huh? Oh, I meant right now. I will tell you, I asked this question to 1,000 math, science, gifted and talented teachers at a conference in Las Vegas. And somebody got up and said, just remember, what happens in Las Vegas stays in Las Vegas. They were all hungover. There was nobody there. Finally, somebody got up with the answer. She had Googled the problem. Do not Google the problem. Don't Google the problem. Why would I take the time to do that? It's to make this point. Right now in America, as I'm working with other countries and they're talking about America, they know that every state, 49 or 50 states went down in math scores during COVID. And so even when I talk about Montgomery County, the fact is that while you are better than most, we in America have a long way to go. If it were not for people who come to this country to go to grad school, to work at NIH, we would not be the leading nation in the world in thinking about science. We would not. We would not. We look at the head of the NSF, Parch is Indian, and I can go down the line of all the people who are. And what I love about UMBC, which reflects Montgomery County so well, is that 60% of our students have a parent from another country. And it does two things. It shows you the hunger of people who come here. And Montgomery County is, I always say, I like saying UMBC feels like the Plaza of Nations at the UN. From all over the world, from every continent. But I also like it because it shows people who've been here for generations the hunger that other people have. If you look at the 20th century and the progress we made in the STEM areas, what you see, quite frankly, is that New York was a hotbed of brain power. New York. And the best of science, and the people who would go on to Harvard, to wherever, right? When we think about Einstein, coming from Germany, you think about just the people. And it was Rabi who won the Nobel Prize in the 40s in physics, who said, when he was growing up, all of his friends' mothers would ask them at the end of a school day, what'd you learn at school today? And he said, but his mother, his Jewish mother, was different. She would say, Izzy, did you ask a good question today? And the practice of encouraging his curiosity made him the thinker he became. That's what I want from my students. I want them to ask good questions. I could have spent 2 hours with them. It was so amazing. It was so amazing. And Daniel is still bothered that he hadn't got that right answer yet. He's determined to give me that answer somehow. But it's that passion, that hunger. The same things I'm talking about in my TED Talk that talks about success in science, I would say it would be true in the humanities and the arts. It is about the high expectations of ourselves. What are we talking about as leaders? It's about knowing our stories. I want you to know your story. It's so amazing. I can stand now that I'm slightly over 70, I can say I had 45 years in Maryland, 35 of which were at UMBC, 30 of which were as president. And before that, in the 60s and late 60s and 70s, I was going through that college education and grad school at Hampton, my beloved Hampton, and then the University of Illinois. And before that, it was all the stuff in Birmingham. And the one story that I always tell is I'm sitting in the back of the room, and I don't want to be in church in the middle of the week. One kid wants to be there, and they want me to hear this visitor who is speaking at the lectern. And he says, if the children participate in this peaceful protest, all of America will know that even our young people know the difference between right and wrong, and that they want a better education. And all I could think about was that everybody was always talking about how good the white schools were. And I was thinking about the fact that all of our books were hand-me-down books. They legitimately gave us, they felt, books after white kids had used them for years. They put brown paper bags around them. And my parents couldn't buy my books into the school because you couldn't bring in new books because then you look different from everybody else. And I I wanted not only my own book, I wanted to see how kids who were different from me, how they thought, because I thought, I'm willing to work as hard as anybody else, because to me, being smart was being passionate, hardworking, curious, willing to do my best, and I wanted to show that. And so I said, who is this guy? His name, of course, was Dr. Martin King. And I went home and said, I gotta go. And what did they tell me? Absolutely not. They said, you're 12. No. And if you go, you gotta go to jail. And I said, you guys are hypocrites. You made me go. I didn't want to go. You made me listen. They gave me the two things I loved, math and food. I was eating M&M's, the good kind of peanuts, right? But when this guy talked, I was just amazed, because he said this, and this is what I want to say to you in terms of leadership. He said, tomorrow can be better than today, but it will only happen if we make it happen. That thing about the arc of justice moving in a certain way, it only moves in a certain way if we make it happen, if we bend it, you see. And so my message to you today is that whether you're these young people, 17, 18, 19, 20, or you're 30, 40, 50, 60, the fact is we must feel empowered to change the things that are not what we want them to be. That message, my parents did allow me to go, and it was transformational, because even though we were treated like animals, too many children in there, not enough bathrooms, stink for a week. Dr. King came in the middle of the week and he said, what you do this day will have an impact on generations who have not yet been born. 50 years ago, I couldn't have seen a room like this in America. Even if 30 years ago we just had a few integrated schools, you would not see leaders in any jurisdiction in our country looking as diverse as this group. And you represent best in class. Are you perfect? Absolutely not. But are you best in class? Yes. What does it mean? It should mean as leaders, yeah, we're so good we want to be even better. You know, when we talk about UMBC leading the country and producing these kids who go on to get PhDs, who are now on faculties from Harvard to Stanford, the president of Clemson is one of mine, just a working class white kid, first in his family to go to college. He sends for me on the plane, right? On the Clemson plane, all right? And I get there and he says to South Carolina, here's my president. You go, what? Right? Not accustomed to it. You know, you do know that the UMBC president has a plane also, right? I had a plane. It was called Southwest. Thank you very much. But my message is, and this is the intellectual question, we're going to get into questions, is this. What should be expected of leaders of a county, which is the richest big county in our country, in a state, first of all, I mean, the richest in our state, in a state that is one of the richest in the country, in a country that is by far the most privileged in the world. That is who you are. While you make this every day, think of yourselves as on this one word. No, you represent the leaders in the most privileged place we can find in the world. And so I want you to believe in the significance of the work you do. I realize that many of you are in services and things, and you may not get so much praise, but think about what happens if you don't do your job. Think about all the families who depend on you. I read the recent survey. I mean, you all get A's and B's in all those categories. I mean, you put the two categories together, the A's and the B's, good and excellent, you got 90%, the 85 to 90% of the people. Nowhere does that happen. Where does that happen? So I realize mental health issues, other kinds of challenges, burnout, all that's it. But what I would say to you is be inspired. Be inspired by the nobility of the work. I want to close because we're going to get into questions and answers. I always wanted to believe that children of any race could become the best at anything. I talk with these students about the implications of AI and the need for more ethics and humanities and arts, not just science and technology. But in all my classes at the University of Illinois, I was the only little kid in math and never saw a professor looking like me. And so when we had COVID and you represent an area where NIH is doing so much, and when one of my little kids, who literally we recruited from rural North Carolina, mile off, back to Chapel Hill, now at NIH, was a Maryland resident at the time, Montgomery County, became the first black woman. She co-chaired the group that found that Moderna vaccine. Her name was Dr. Kismethia Corbett. I was up at Harvard giving a talk, and there I got amazing students in grad school, but to see her there as the only black faculty member in immunology. Give the first black woman to create a vaccine in the world, Dr. Kismethia Corbett, a big round of applause. And there's the message, that it will be the dreams and the values that will shape us. And so I want you to repeat after me: thoughts, words, actions, habits, character, destiny. Now let me show you something. Get up off your feet, and we're going to do it like it's that basketball game for UVA and UMBC. Or it's like when we beat Yale in mock trial a year ago. Big deal. Big round of applause for mock trial.